is Jones Carry On. It's awesome to see this great crowd on a Friday morning. Thank you so much. This is part of our Parent Academy workshop. Mrs. Foy is the coordinator of our Parent Academy. She's also our elementary supervisor and runs the K-Center. We've had a few topics throughout the year, a lot focusing on the anxious generation. This is a continuation and offshoot of anxious generation, and we have an amazing presenter. You're going to get so much this morning from Ms. Huzzy, who is the student assistant counselor here at Pierrepont. And she's going to have some great expertise to share with you this morning.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I hope I can match up to that. So, yep. Okay, is this better? So I'm not great with the microphone, so so if you can't hear me, just start waving. Any better? No? Turn it up. Better? Okay, good. So this is a really big crowd. I've been doing parent education programs for the last 24 years, and this is the biggest I think we've had in forever. So I'm not sure if it's just the way we're putting it out there for you guys, or if it's just really this topic, which is I think really one of the most important topics that we need to start talking about. We spent a lot of time, like Mrs. Carry-On said, really starting to talk about the Anxious Generation book and how it really impacts our children. In fact, it's reshaping our children's childhood way differently than any other generation. The exposure they have to technology and phones and, you know, the wealth of information that they're getting, sometimes really scary information, is not only rewiring the pathways, but they're also being exposed to things that we don't want them to be exposed to. So as if parenting wasn't hard enough, you know, those little moments you had on the weekend when you could give the iPad to your son or daughter just to kind of get some sanity, now you feel guilty. And especially after I've read this book, I'm like, oh, I shouldn't even let him on this phone, because apparently using the phone is, again, rewiring his brain to become more addicted to that technology we don't want him to be addicted to. So it is really scary. Today we're going to do this a little differently, because before we were kind of talking about how everything in the book has impacted, say, the way children play, how they interact socially. Today's workshop is going to be all hands-on intervention. So when you leave here today, I guarantee you will have interventions you can use with your student who is in kindergarten. Even if you have an 18-year-old getting ready to go to college, if they don't have these skills, I guarantee you can take them home, teach them, and get something more out of that, and even for ourselves, because a lot of these things I do at my house. I have a 16-year-old daughter who is a sophomore in high school, and I have an 8-year-old son in second grade. So I have a huge, you know, a little bit of a window there that I kind of, over time, through trial and error, know what worked with my daughter, and so I'm not repeating that same type of stuff with my son that, you know, that he's not getting anything out of. So the great thing is that these types of conversations help us start to talk not only with us from in the school community, but you guys start talking about this as well, just opening up that dialogue. So what is executive functioning and why does it matter? So executive functioning is not something that we're born with. It begins early on in infancy, where all of a sudden, you know, you have this child and you're teaching them impulse control. You're teaching them to recognize the word no. These are all skills that some kids, even adults, still struggle with, but it's always developing. So as we get older, our prefrontal cortex is where our executive functioning lives. And that's not fully developed until for boys, it's, you know, into their, you know, 21, 22, 23. For girls, it's a little younger. But these skills can be developed even if they don't have them, you know, as 16-year-olds. So it helps with planning and organization, you know, knowing what you need to do on a daily basis to get places on time, for time management, self-control, flexible thinking. So these are all really important skills that if we don't help our children find these skills, teach them these skills, expect that they learn these skills, then as they get older, they are not functioning adults. And what I'm noticing over the course of, again, my span with my 16-year-old, there were a few things that I should have done a little differently that I'm now doing with my son. So these are the things that I'm going to highlight for you also throughout our workshop today. So I'm going to get right started with the first strategy. So planning and organizing. Power hour, tidy time, and reset. So these are the things that I use in my house a lot. So power hour is something we do every weekend. I can't always guarantee they're happy about this, my 2 children, but we designate 1 hour a weekend to do a task that no one wanted to do all week, something that's built up over time. So for me, last weekend, I did my a reorganization of my laundry closet, or my linen closet, I'm sorry. So I took 1 full hour, did everything. And it was not only something that relieved some of my own anxiety because it was hanging over my head, but it gave me, the time to really kind of devote and teach and model this skill for my son and my daughter. So for them, with my older daughter, we do power hour. She usually does something with her bathroom and her room, just to kind of really find a time to focus on those really important tasks of getting things organized. With my son, we call it tidy time. Again, it's the same thing, but it's a little bit of a shorter time. And so we say, sometimes just play. He'll say, can I play 1 game? And I'll say, you could play 1 game, but how long's that game? Well, 15 minutes. So that's how much tidy time will be then. So we kind of negotiate, it's not all or nothing with the gaming and the computer use, but, I think it's really important for us as parents to not only tell them what to do, but plan with them what they need, what they think needs to be done. And they are able to start to make those decisions on their own, because then you don't have to keep reminding them over and over again. And then the reset. So I say reset a lot at my house because it doesn't seem to set them off as much as clean up your room, or, clean up all the mess in the foyer. So every single day, one of my biggest rules is to reset their book bag, because I don't know about you guys, but I have helped or cleaned out my daughter's book bag in elementary school, in middle school, and I've reached in and took out a rotten banana, chewed gum, papers. I mean, you name it, it's in there. And so as I'm doing this, and I'm like, wait, why am I doing this? This is silly. So now every night we say reset. So I reset the kitchen. I don't like to come down to a messy kitchen. They reset their book bags. But it's something they do every single night. A helpful strategy. Okay. How many of you have walked into your house and tripped over sneakers, book bags, jackets, sports equipment? Happens on the daily, right? So for me, we say, don't put it down, put it away. Don't put it down, put it away. Now, they do not like me to say that. They cringe, they roll their eyes at me, but it's such an important skill. It saves so much time for later down the road. So you don't have to put everything away at the end of your night. If every time you have a drink or you bring out the orange juice, why are you putting it down on the counter? Put it back in the refrigerator. It saves you a step. And then I'm not nagging them, right? Because there's so many times we're nagging, we're telling them, do this, now do that. So you say this, and you could say this to yourself too. Even for myself, I come home from work, if I'm going to the gym, I'll change my clothes. I throw my clothes sometimes over my most expensive hanger, which is my treadmill in my room. And I have always the thought, well, I'll hang it up when I get home. And then 5 days later, I have a mound of clothes on a treadmill that I'm not using. But when we start to put things away, right when we're taking them off, it really starts to prevent that massive buildup. And then that buildup creates anxiety. And then the bigger it is, the less you want to work on it. So I think if we start saying to them, you come home, don't put your lunch box on the kitchen table, put it away. Don't put your shoes, don't just set your shoes down, put them in the closet. So this will start to help them. You start using this dialogue, because then they'll repeat it. So my son is way better at this, just because we did this earlier on with him. With my daughter, she finds me more annoying. So when I say it, again, the pushback happens, but it's working. And, we definitely have to start to take time when they're older. It takes a little bit more time, but I'm telling you, I feel relief in my house when I started just a couple of these things differently, probably about 2-3 years ago. So, reminders and checklists. So this is imperative. I have some checklists and reminder sheets and things back there that are things that you can use if you want to pick up on your way out. But one of the best things about those, it makes children accountable and responsible for what they have to get done. You are not to fill them out for your children. When you do a to-do list, when you plan, you have them plan with you. If it's on a weekend, what does tomorrow look like? So the next slide is a whole bunch of free printable websites that you can take a look at. But I just have, like I said, a couple back there. But it's important because what ends up happening is you don't want to become the person that says, oh, here's your chore list, and then you have to remind them 24/7. Did you do this? Did you do that? You become, that voice that they don't want to hear. And then eventually they don't hear you anyway. So having those reminders and checklists are really important. So just a couple creative hacks. So email yourself the reminder. Teach your children if they're, and they're in the middle of something, they're always on their Chromebook. If you have to get something done, email yourself a reminder. Use smart speakers, use Alexa, use whatever is there a Chrome version or is that the Chrome version? But there's many of those types of speakers that, Google Home, thank you, that you can have them use for reminders. Color code checklist, of course. Sticky notes in odd places. I had a roommate in college, when she had to remember to do something the following day, she would use a post-it note on her, put it on her orange juice. So when she got up in the morning, she would get her orange juice as she was leaving, and then the post-it note would be there. She's like, oh, I have to bring A, B, and C. So you can be creative. With the post-it notes, reminders, things like that, you have to change location though. So if you keep that post-it note in the same location as that reminder, eventually it becomes part of the environment, and then you don't realize it's there. So you kind of have to change that around. Using alarm clocks. So instead of just setting that alarm or that reminder for 7, you could set the alarm for, drink some more water. Those reminders, like be specific and name what you want to be reminded about. You can make it into a game. If you can turn anything into a game, especially for the younger ones, that is awesome. They want to buy in. You want them to buy in. They will buy in with games. So making those lists, like how many things can you get checked off by the end of the week? Does that mean you get, extra bedtime on the weekend? And then you could use photos also. So one of the things that I do when I leave the house, sometimes I'm a little bit of a, I'm planning to get out and I'm rushing, and I'll take a picture of like my stove to make sure that I know I turned it off because I'm checking that. So that picture helps me as a reminder that I did, turn that stove off. So little things like that, don't take too much time, but it allows them to, use some of these like out of the box hacks. This is not my idea. I got this from my friend. So she told me about these little bracelet things that she has her son wear. He has severe ADHD, and for him to get out of the house and, brushing his teeth, eating breakfast, getting dressed, bringing your book, getting your water bottle, she has one little cord on each, she has about 4. And these little things right here, you could write down what skill or what job this person needs to do. So he has brush his teeth, brush his hair, put your shoes on. And when his cords are gone and they're off of his wrist, he knows that he did everything he needed to do. So again, I'm not sure, these are probably all around their house, but it's working. So what works for them might not work for me, but I thought that was an ingenious idea. So think out of the box. I think, again, the post-it note on the orange juice, it's awesome. Sometimes I'll even move something out of place. Like if I need to bring something with me to school, like I'll move that item out of the area where it usually would be. So like if I wanted to bring like hairspray to school to fix my hair for today's presentation, I left that on my TV, like right in front of my TV this morning, because I thought about that last night. So I'm like, oh, let me move it out of the space that I always see it, because I'll never remember to bring it. So just little tricks like that go a long, long way. So here are the free printable planning and organization templates. So Woo Junior, scatteredsquirrel.com, I should be mopping the floor.com. This also, guys, I know everyone's taking some pictures. This will be on our website. So at any given time, you can just, take a look at that, or even call me I can even print some of these out, send them home with your children if you want them. The Crafting Chicks and Canva. The kids love Canva. Like that's one of the ones that they recently started using. I don't use it much, but I think they seem to really like it. Oh, okay. So we could put the links with the post. So we're going to switch gears a little bit to working memory. So I forgot. I'm sure you guys hear that a lot. I forgot my Chromebook. I forgot to charge my Chromebook. I forgot my water bottle. I left my homework on the table. When things like this happen, I forgot to throw that in the trash. I forgot that the banana peel didn't belong underneath the couch. I realized it should have been in the garbage, but there was no garbage by me. So when kids have a hard time remembering what to do with things, and they don't put their stuff away, one of the things that I've taught not only the kids here in Rutherford, but my own children, is to look back. It's the look back rule. I call it the Huzzy look back rule here. When I say that at home, my children roll their eyes at me. But here's how it works. Before you leave any room, you scan the room. You take a quick visual scan. What do you see that's yours that's not supposed to be in here, right? So his pajamas, I'm talking about my 8-year-old son, he's coloring now again, his little miniature football guys, a glass of water. And so what I found myself doing was picking everything up, and then of course picking everything up from my daughter too. And I'm like, what am I doing? So we started the look back rule, and the way that it works, like I said, is you start to scan. And so what I have encouraged him to do, and we've practiced this with my daughter, she should know by now to be able to look behind her and say, what am I missing? What should I be taking out of here? So, but with him, there is a little bit of a reminder time. So I'll say, look back, and then I ask him, what do you see? So I'm not pointing things out, because when you point things out, once again, you become a nag, and they're the verbal to-do list. That you don't want to start doing that. If you're doing that, we have to get out of the routine of saying, pick this up, pick that up, pick this up. So this way you're able to leave the room and everything could have a place to go to. So if it's trash, in the garbage. If it's a hairbrush, back in the bathroom. If it's a banana peel, again, in the garbage. It keeps them organized. It promotes independence. It, again, gives them the opportunity to be able to be more aware of their surroundings, because kids with executive functionings have a hard time with being aware of their surroundings. They're not aware of what they're contributing in conversation sometimes, the way they react sometimes. Sometimes when kids have an overwhelming emotion, and we're going to talk about that soon, they're not aware how they come across when they're speaking to their teacher, their peers, you as parents. So this is just a great tool that I think really works. And like I said, some might work for you, some might not, but it's just a great strategy. Did I get that? All right, so I forgot again. I forgot, it's not my fault, it was an accident. These are things I hear often. So anchoring is linking an important object to an essential object. So, for example, in my house, my daughter keeps her book bag in the bathroom, and here's why. The last stop of her day is the bathroom. She checks her makeup. So when she's getting ready every single morning, she ends up coming in and out of the room, going into the bathroom. So she'll charge her Chromebook in her room. One stop into the bathroom, she's leaving that right by the book bag. Then she goes back in, she'll get dressed. And as she does this, everything that she's going to be bringing to school that day is either in the book bag or around the book bag. So when she leaves, her last stop, she'll run upstairs, she checks whatever she's checking, she grabs the book bag, and then she's on her way. So everything is anchored there. So my son, on the other hand, his book bag is by the door. So he collects everything that he's bringing to school. Like today was board game day, so they got to bring their board game in. So last night, he put his board game by his book bag. So just ensures that things are leaving with you. For me, it's my purse, my keys, my purse, my phone. So another strategy not to forget. Okay, so here's one. I forgot again and again. So one of the things that kids don't really love to do, but I'm a big believer in writing. And if they don't use I know they love to use their phones and their notes and their memos, and that's all great. But if we're trying to keep them away from their phones, they have to kind of go back to basics. And writing things down is really important because they process information down when they're actually writing it. And they're able to go back and look and change. So one of my biggest recommendations, especially when kids are doing homework, right? They always look for that distraction. I need a glass of water. Oh, I meant to put my phone on the charger. Whatever that is, what I have both my children do is they have like a piece of paper or a book, and they jot down whatever idea that they have or whatever they're remembering to do to really avoid the homework. But just so they have that piece of paper there, they can jot that down so they don't have to get up and stop and start and stop and start. So this gives a way for them to not avoid the work, but also if they do really have an idea, to write it down, and then this is something they can carry with them. But I know there's the notes apps. I know there's all these apps that kids use. But if we're trying to lessen the distraction, we have to give them other options. So, and I'm not saying the phones can't be used ever, but we just want to make sure it's more balanced. So we're not solely dependent on these phones. Let's see what's next. Time management. So habit stacking. Habit stacking is a really wonderful tool. I like this one. This has actually helped me at my house, and I work, again, with the kids here about building effective habits to make sure that they're remembering to do the tasks that they have to do. And so you focus on small little changes and actions that will gradually build up to new behaviors. So it's a strategy for building those behaviors by anchoring them to existing behaviors. So my son brushes his teeth every morning, and he gets dressed before he comes downstairs. Monday and Tuesdays, I take him to before care, and I brush his hair before we leave. So that's the last thing we do. On Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays, my husband puts him on the bus. He works from home. Monday through Tuesday, his hair is perfect. Wednesday through Friday, he looks like he just woke up at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So I said to him, like, what's going on with your hair? And he said, oh, I forgot to brush it. And I said, well, okay. And then I said to my husband, hey, can you brush his hair on the way out? You know, like, I work at a school, you know, we want to see kids coming in, taking care of their hygiene. So he's like, yeah. So next thing you know, still the hair is everywhere. So what we did to habit stack, he brushes his teeth. He doesn't give me one problem brushing his teeth, which I know a lot of parents have a hard time getting their kids to brush their teeth. That I don't have a challenge with him with. But when he's brushing his hair, we also added brushing his teeth. We added and stacked on brushing his hair. So it's easier to not start a new behavior out of the blue, like brush your hair right before you go, because now that's on you and you're kind of out of the bathroom where that stuff is. So by him brushing his teeth and then brushing his hair, we habit stack that. Same thing if you don't take your vitamins, right? I try to take vitamins and I have high hopes. And I would say 2 times out of the week I'm taking them because I forget to do that at night. So habit stacking a vitamin, you know, these types of skills that are already in your routine in the morning, you add one, and then it makes it so much easier. And then it builds resilience, and you can be grateful that, you know, these are the routines that you have, because they do like transfer very well into academic success. And like even like the Chromebook, habit stack the Chromebook when you're done, when your student's done with the Chromebook. Plug it in, have that routine. Now, if they're already plugging it in and you want to add another routine like packing the book bag or resetting the book bag, add it to the plugging in of the Chromebook, right? So this way it's, again, everything's working together. And it reduces decision fatigue too. That's really important to remember, that kids that have executive functioning challenges, they have a hard time making decisions and realizing, you know, should I bring this down now? Should I do this? Like, planning is hard. So when you could take away the decision of, should I brush my hair now or later, because it's already attached to brushing your teeth, it takes away that decision to have to think about a new behavior or adding a new behavior in. Oh, sorry, there's my habit stacking. So 2-minute rule. So this is David Allen is a author, and he wrote the book Getting Things Done. Anyone know it? It's an awesome book. My husband read it, and he thought I should read it. I'm not sure what that means, but one of the things that he started doing with my son and my daughter was using the 2-minute rule. And here's how it works. If you could do anything under 2 minutes, you perform that task. Because when you let those 2-minute activities or tasks pile up, then you have a mountain of tasks to do. So if you have an uncomfortable email to write, that's only going to take less than 2 minutes, write it. If it's just a quick answer that you have to, tell your boss, email, you get it done right away. If it's like this, if you have 2 more problems left of your math homework, do the 2 problems. Don't wait until after dinner. So those 2 minutes are really, really important. I say very often in my house, again, another thing my kids might be sick of me saying is, you can't trust your future self to remember. You cannot trust your future self to remember to do some of these tasks. So when I say that to my daughter, she says, oh, I'll remember. I'll do it after dinner. And I'll say to her, but you don't remember, right? You never remember. So if you know you have to get something done and you can get it done in 2 minutes, just do it, right? We cannot depend on our future selves. Even me, we're not perfect as parents. Like, we're running around and, oh, I'll, make that phone call later, or I'll text that person back later. I'm good for not responding to text. So, but just do it and get it out. 2 minutes, it's quick. But it is a really good book, Getting Things Done by David Allen. Okay, the 15 procrastination rule. The hardest part of any task is the beginning of any task, especially if that task is something your child is avoiding. Homework, cleaning their room, big projects, the literacy fair, right? That was something that a lot of kids have been really talking about the last couple of weeks. Getting their board in on time, doing their summaries and all that other good stuff that comes with that great creative project. However, a lot of kids feel overwhelmed when it's such a big project. And so breaking that down into small parts is really helpful. And so the procrastination rule is very simple. If you feel like you don't want to do something, you commit to doing something for 15 minutes and you set an alarm. 80% of the time, whatever that task still has left over, you're going to take the initiative and finish that task. So for me, it's vacuuming. I hate to vacuum. So if I commit to 15 minutes of vacuuming and I get 60% of it done, I'm willing most of the time, 80% of the time, to get the rest of it done. So those times that I'm not, well, then half of it's vacuumed at least, and it doesn't look like a mess in every room. But it's the same thing with homework assignments. So when there is 10 homework questions in math, let's say, and they don't want to do their work, you set the timer. What can you get done in 15 minutes? At the end of the 15 minutes, you could reassess. Do you want to hand this into your teacher with 80% of it done? And if you do, that's not a 0. So that's awesome. But if you don't and you want to do the next 3 problems, then great, you have it all done. But at least something's being submitted. So this works for cleaning. This works for homework. This works for any type of task that your child's avoiding. Body doubling. I like this one. So this is really good for kids, again, starting tasks, especially kids with ADHD, because again, when you send your child to do something that they can't, not that they can't do, but that they don't know where to start, or they don't understand how to organize something, or they walk into their room that has been a mess for a month and you send them there and you think they're doing it and they're not, and they're on their phone and it's just as messy. Having a body double, which is just you or even a sibling of your child that struggles, having that sibling or yourself accompany your child in the beginning of every task. This is why I say don't allow your children to do their homework out of your sight. Not that you have to be over top of your children, but if you're in the same room with your child, you can assure that they're focused and they're not getting up to pet the dog or go find their phone that I've hidden 100 times. So these types of strategies really help. And so what that means is if I said to my daughter, go clean your room, I would go with her. I don't clean the room. I just act as like an anchor for her. She has to be more accountable to me because now I'm sitting there. She gets started, which again, the hardest part of any task is just beginning. So as soon as she gets some momentum, then she's not wanting me there anyway, but it does help. And sometimes it's a good time to talk too, because they want to be distracted. So if you can kind of fit in a conversation with your teenager or your child as your body doubling, that's really helpful. But it increases self-awareness and self-regulation and accountability. You being an external presence in that room helps them understand that, this has to be done. And if I don't get it done, there are going to be these consequences. But they do build greater independence when they're doing this and you're helping them along with it. Self-regulation. All right, so for me, I have to say that this is, if I had to pick any executive functioning skill, probably one of the most important executive functioning skills for children to master. And there's a lot of reason for that. Children that cannot control their emotions have a hard time in school. I have 2 children. I have my son who nothing bothers him. My daughter, everything bothers her. She's highly reactive. And sometimes when she reacts, whether it's with us as, in my house with things that we want her to do that we're helping her with, her overreaction gets her in more trouble than the original infraction. That might have been something like, be nicer to your brother. Don't call him jerkface, because that's what she likes to call him. And she also changed his Roadblocks server or username to jerkface. His teacher told me that, by the way. So that was what I heard about in November and during conferences. So that was great. So anyway, with my daughter, and like, I'll say to her, don't do that. Don't call him a name. Well, he called me a name. He hit me. But you're 8 years older than him, So those are the type of conversations we have. But then her reaction is so over the top that she didn't have any consequences. But now the way she's speaking to me, she lost her phone. So like, then she de-escalates, right? And then it's like, girl interrupted, and you're like, all I did was take your phone for like a minute. So I think what we have to do, once again, is start to teach our children the power to, number one, realize how important it is to control their reactions and their emotions, frustration, anger, sadness. When kids show who they are and they know that, certain kids can say certain things and it makes them upset, other kids pick up on that. And then that becomes their poke, right? I've seen that happen here, I had a student that I worked with for years when we were a K-8 school, and he had a locker outside of my room, and every day one of the kids would lock his locker. It was his friend, so it wasn't being done maliciously, but the kid would react so quickly. He'd go from 0 to 100, then it became a thing. So then every day, this one friend was trying to just start, we would lock his friend's locker, and the friend would react. And then that became what he was known for. So how can we get him to react in gym when we won't pass him the ball? So being able to regulate is really important for academic success, peer relationships, working, even talking with your teachers. A lot of times as kids get older, I'm completely transparent. I'm an open book. I know it's hard being a mom of a teenager, especially a girl. So when we've had situations where my daughter's principal has called me when she was in 5th grade because she was accused of taking a remote from a classroom, she didn't take it, but nonetheless, her overreaction of saying I didn't take it got her in more trouble. Turns out they found the remote and it wasn't with her, but she had detention. And to be honest, I said, just give it to her. Like, I was kind of at a loss at that point because, you know what? She didn't take it. She was accused of it. Did I like that? No, but she reacted really poorly. So give her detention, have her have consequences. It's the only way that she's going to learn. She'll call me mean on a daily basis. But honestly, if you're not mean sometimes, then you're not doing it right. We have to be tough. And I'm saying there's exceptions to the rule where I'm not saying be mean to your kids, but you have to really put it in perspective. They have to face consequences. They have to be responsible, and they cannot completely rely on you for everything. The power of the pause prevents kids from saying things that they don't or should not say. So, and it's really hard to teach kids with executive functioning issues to pause because they're impulsive. And so teaching kids to pause, you'd play games to help them pause. Like if you're doing a study guide for the little ones, you can say, okay, you're going to give me the answer 1 to 5, but you're going to pause for 5 seconds in between each answer. So you come up with creative games to practice the pause. You model the pause. So like if my, husband's making me mad and I'm frustrated, I'll say out loud, I just need a second. I'm going to step over here. I need a second. But that's the pause. Or let me get back to you and think about that. You want to go to a party with a senior in his car. I knew the answer, but let me think about that. But modeling is so important, and I think that's what we can do. I will share stories about what I'm working with kids here. I share my kids' stories with your kids because I think they're really good learning lessons. So if you can tell stories about you being at work and your coworker overreacting and snapping at his boss or her boss, those stories are teachable moments. So the power of the pause is really, really important. And then it helps with listening skills too. So for kids with executive functioning skills, their challenge is listening. And so how that translates to problem with peers is eventually kids get frustrated when you're interrupting them or you're not listening. And I see more around middle school age is when kids start to pulling away from those kids that interrupt a lot or make it all about them. Not because that's what they want, but because they're struggling with that specific skill in the executive challenging area. So RAIN, this is a way to pause. So you recognize and identify the emotion you're experiencing. You accept that feeling without judgment. And it's okay to be overwhelmed and feel upset. You validate that. You understand that they're having a rough day, but you still can't scream and yell and throw things when you're frustrated. So acknowledging that for them, helping them acknowledge it. You investigate, you consider why you might feel this way, what triggered it. And then finally, you give yourself that comfort and that support. But this is a good way. RAIN is really easy to teach kids, but it helps them start to use some emotional regulation and practice. The more they practice, the better they're going to be. So the breath of joy is, all right, so let me talk a little bit about breath work. So I am a big believer in breath work. In my group, so I run topic-oriented social skills groups, anger management group, changing family group, self-esteem group. And what I do a lot with them is teaching them how to breathe. They don't like it because it's boring and it takes time to learn. But if they can effectively learn deep breathing at this age, they will be healthier adults. They'll be able to manage their emotions much better. But it is kind of boring for them and it takes time. So this breath, so this is called the joy of breath. So I'm going to just play it really quickly, if I can figure it out.
When I started drinking warm water to help with my memory, my friends laughed at me. But when they saw how much I'd improved...
Video on breath of joy. And this is a fantastic breath practice to energize your body, bring in that feeling of joy, reset in the middle of your day or whenever you feel like you need to mix things up. Hannah's here with me and she's going to help us demonstrate. We'll take this standing with your knees bent, your feet about hip distance apart. I'll give us a little bit of space so I don't knock Hannah out. For this breath, we're going to be using our arms and we're going to take 3 breaths in to 1 breath out. So the first third of your breath, you're going to inhale through your nose, bring your arms forward in front of you to shoulder height, palms facing out. Second third of your breath, you're going to inhale arms out wide. Third third of your breath, you're going to inhale arms to the sky. So it's an inhale, inhale, inhale to fill up. And then as you exhale, you bend your knees like you're taking a squat, send your arms back and let it out through your mouth, make a ha sound. So it'll look like this. I'll demonstrate once and then we'll do it together 9 times in a row. As you're ready to join, I'll try to count. If I don't do 9, you can call me out on it. Find your nice comfortable position. Take a deep breath in to start. Open mouth, exhale, let it go. And we begin. Inhale, inhale, inhale. 2 more. Deep breath in. Let it go. Take a moment. Maybe you close your eyes.
Okay, so this breath, So this breath is good because it involves motion and motion helps with not hyper-focusing on the breath. So when you tell a student in the beginning to deep breathe, it kind of looks like this. But that's not going to help them. So the way you teach it is you breathe in 3 times, or in 3, hold 3, and then out 3. But again, it gets boring. But this, they really like. And this is a really good reset when they come home from school and they have to start their homework. So I just wanted to include this one. And if you can practice deep breathing, like box breathing, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, any type of breathing, if you could start that now, it is such a great skill that they'll be able to use for a lifetime. So adjusting to change, this is really hard for kids with executive functioning challenges. Life is really difficult and things change on a dime, right? And when kids get disappointed and they have a hard time regulating, it could look anything from, a full-on tantrum to something, where they're slamming and they're throwing and, yelling and screaming. So I know for myself, one of the things that I did early on as a parent with my daughter was I tried to protect her from her feelings in the beginning. So like around 3, 4, and 5, she was a really intense kid. And I remember at 3, my husband and I thought it was funny at the time, but she walked through a door and the door knob swung and hit her in the head. And she turned around and looked at that doorknob and she clocked it because it purposely hit her in the head. That's the type of kid she is. She's great. She's strong-willed. She's passionate. She's smart, talented, athletic, but she does have a hard time when she gets frustrated. And so what would happen is she would have these moments like anyone would have, like at a birthday party, we would take her to, her friend's birthday party. But for me, birthday parties were like her kryptonite because I could guarantee that at any given time, she would have a de-escalation of her mood, her ability to control herself. So if she wasn't first, she didn't get the first piece of cake at the birthday girl's party, I knew that was going to be a problem. So I would do all this overcompensating to kind of get in before it was going to explode. But in doing that, what I didn't realize at the time, and I should have, because I would have told you this at that point of my career, that by stepping in is not giving them the opportunity to learn to manage their feeling. I didn't want, selfishly for me, I didn't want to have her tantrum in front of all the other parents. I'll be completely transparent about that. However, I should have allowed her to work it out and through trial and error, try to figure it out for herself because, she would be having a bad day in 5th grade and she would call me from the nurse's office. I'm having a bad day. Well, okay, well, you're in school and I'm in school and we're working, so, but because I stepped in so often and helped regulate her, she wasn't learning those skills. So it has been harder to get her to start to do that for herself, but she is doing it now. So again, we're all works in progress. We're doing things the best that we can do, but we're going to make mistakes. But I just think it's so important that we help them adjust to change, help them adjust when things are difficult and things don't go their way. It helps with problem solving. It helps with, getting them to understand that you're not going to always have things work out perfectly. One of the things that I should have included this on a slide, but we have to let our kids fail. We have to allow them to have moments where we don't run in and save them. And this could be anything simply from, Mom, I forgot my board was due for the literacy fair, and if I don't get it now, or you don't drop it off, then I'm going to have 10 points taken off. We, as parents, and myself included, have done this, run to the school and dropped off whatever she was missing so she didn't lose points. But what that did was just make her understand, and I programmed her to say, like, oh, you forgot it, I'm going to bring it. So we kind of started working her out of that probably in, upper elementary school. But nonetheless, when they get 10 points off on a test or a homework assignment or for not bringing the literacy fair board in, don't call and ask for an exception, because what happens is you can't call high school and ask for an exception or ask them to hand it in at a later date. It's not teaching them anything. And not that grades don't matter from kindergarten to 8th grade, because they do, because it provides them the foundation that they need to be successful. But if they don't get a good grade in 5th grade ELA, okay, it's not going anywhere. That grade's not following them to high school. So let them face the consequences of having points taken off, even if it's half credit. Those grades go nowhere. They just start to build a foundation. We want to make sure that they know this before they are in high school, and there is no going back. Same thing with lates and tardiness. I often say in my house, life circumstances cannot get in the way of your responsibility. Last weekend, my son wanted to watch a movie. He had a soccer tournament on Sunday morning. Saturday night, he wanted to stay up late. And I said to him, listen, tomorrow morning you have a soccer tournament. We have to be in Teaneck at 7 o'clock. So I live in Parsippany. That's a far drive. We have to get up early. Okay, I want to watch it. I said, okay, but that's going to be on you in the morning. You're going. So of course, Sunday morning rolls around and he doesn't want to go and he's sleepy. And I don't want to go. You're making me go. I don't want to play. And I said to him, life circumstances can get in the way of your responsibility. And what's a life circumstance? Well, a life circumstance is you wanting to watch that movie last night that made you go to bed at 10 o'clock. And now you have to get up at 6 and you don't want to get up. So things like that, my daughter is well aware of life circumstances getting in the way of her responsibility. And we're working her out of that too. She's actually much better now, thankfully. But we didn't start that until later. So if you're not doing that now, we have to have them own that. We have to let them know that just because they had to go to 3 sports practices after school because they want to be in 3 sports, that homework has to be done and they have to be at school on time. So now's the time for them to understand that, not in high school. But all these things and teaching them this social emotional regulation and allowing them to, learn that things change, and sometimes we don't like change, but we have to live through change and we have to accommodate our schedules to change. And these are things that will really help them really become adults that are functioning. I met over the summer, I was in Florida, and my husband and I were talking to a couple on the beach, and the woman was an NYU professor, and she was referring to freshmen coming in as teacups. She said, teacup freshmen. And I said, and I didn't know what that meant. And I said, what's a teacup freshman? And she said, oh, that's what we call the freshmen coming in that are new, because they're so fragile, they're falling apart when they don't get along with their roommate or when they don't get an A, and so things like that's scary. The years go by so quickly, and if we're not preparing them, for that failure, and we don't let them fail, and we can pick them up, we can validate, we can be there to support them. Not saying we let them fail all the time, but they have to learn. It's really, really important. One of the last things that I started doing just recently, this is from a Harvard professor, Arthur Brooks. He teaches a class on happiness, and it's called the Failure and Disappointment Reflection Method, So the way this works is when you have something that didn't go your way, a problem, a loss, a stressor, and you're having a bad day, before you're overreacting, or even after you overreact, you write down what that loss, disappointment, or problem was. Then you take a break. A week later, you come back and you ask yourself, what did I get out of that moment? What did I learn? And then you come back again for even more perspective, and you say, was there a silver lining in there? Was there growth? Was there a benefit to that problem that I had? And so I was doing this recently with a student last year, a 6th grade girl. She came to me, she was upset. She was, over the weekend, she had a fight with her friends. So when she came back into school, she was sitting at her lunch table with her 4 friends, one of the girls that she had the conflict with. And she realized even though they solved the conflict, the girl wasn't talking with her. And her other 2 friends weren't talking to her either. So she was really upset. She came to see me. We talked about it. Now, this particular student is in a self-esteem group with me, and we keep marble notebooks. So all my groups, the kids get marble notebooks, whether it's anxiety management, anger management, changing families, whatever that group they're in. I send them every day with a marble. They come in and out with a marble notebook, and it's their toolbox, and they collect strategies, and they journal, and then they earn prizes when they teach their parents what they're learning in my groups. So I said, why don't get your toolbox out? It was in my room at that point. I said, let's just write down what happened. So she wrote it down. She was upset. I said, okay, do you feel ready to go back to class? She went back to class. A week later, she came for group, and I said, hey, hang back. Let's talk. I wanted to know what happened and how things were going with her friend. And she said, well, still not going great, but I moved my seat. And I said, okay, that's great. So I said, so what do you think now? Like, looking back, was there, anything you learned from that? She's like, well, I really thought I wouldn't be coming to school for the last couple of days because I didn't have anyone to sit with, but I pushed myself to come. And, I'm happy that I did that. I'm still kind of feeling sad, but I had her jot that down also. So what did she learn from that? So another week goes by, she comes back and she said, oh, I just wanted to tell you something. I said, what? She said, when I moved my seat, I started sitting next to Sarah. And Sarah and I went to elementary school together, and we hadn't talked since we've been in class together in 3rd grade. And so we reconnected, and we're hanging out over the weekend. So now write, what's your silver lining? So this really helps. It's such a great tool because you're learning and you're finding patterns. So if I say to the kids often, if you have the same problem with the same friends or different groups of friends or with the teacher or with your parents, if you have that same problem that's repetitive, you're contributing to that. You're the common denominator to that. So what are you doing that you can change so then you can fit into that system and adapt to those changes in that system and appropriately socialize with your peers or resolve a conflict? So this little book that these kids are using, and again, they don't like this one either because it involves writing, but it is so powerful because now when this student now is in union school, she still has her toolbox. So I'm hoping she's going to use it and start to record every time she has one of these moments of disappointment. And so then in high school, when she has that same disappointment, she can go back and have perspective on it. So, returning back to what worked and what didn't work is so important. It's all trial and error. It's, You're going to have great days with them. They're going to be tough days with them. But these types of interventions are teaching them the skills that they need so they can really be successful adults and they don't have to depend on you all of the time. I think that is it. Does anyone have any questions? Oh, thank you. Want this? Oh.
Thank you very much. I think and I hope that all of you were able to benefit from today's presentation. Ms. Huzzy, I think you provided everybody with a significant amount of information to go home. I already have in my head about 1,000 things I'm going to do as a parent today. I have to get my little marble notebook though, so I can write it down and remember all of them. But I appreciate everyone coming out. We are excited that we've been able to provide so many different parent training workshops this year, and we will have a few more coming up in the spring. I have some Post-it notes around the desks or in the back circle table. If you have any other topics you'd like to see, or any feedback, what's the best means of communication, any type of information that will help us as we plan for the rest of this year and into next year, we'd appreciate it. You don't have to leave your name. You can leave your name, but we appreciate it. And again, Ms. Huzzy, thank you very much for all the resources and tools. They are also, there are printouts that are over on the table in the back there. So thank you again.